This is the story of the life of Ameli Sievers, born in Pretoria, South Africa on 10 June 2020 amid the global pandemic. I'll share Ameli's story in English to make it accessible to a wider audience. I hope to share this video far and wide to spread awareness of Angelman syndrome. My name is Nikki and I am Ameli's mom. In a nutshell, I'm a dancer and a dance teacher. Even though I'm still the owner of my own business and I continue to pour my heart and soul into it, my most important role is to be Ameli's mom. Let's start with a little bit about my journey through pregnancy and birth. I had a wonderful pregnancy with no complications. I had the obvious and normal symptoms such as nausea, heartburn, back pain, etc. But all in all, it was a positive experience. At 37 weeks and 4 days, my water broke without having had any contractions. I was still planning on having a home birth, so we contacted the midwife and arranged to collect the inflatable tub as I wanted to give birth in water. They monitored Ameli's heart rate and said everything still looked okay, but they could only give me 8 to 12 hours to start having contractions. In my efforts to do so, I started walking. We even took the dogs to the dog park so that I could walk some more. However, my contractions still did not start. I was lying on the couch when I told my husband, Emil, that I wasn't feeling well. I went to the bathroom and to my utter shock, there was a lot of blood. He immediately phoned the midwife and rushed to hospital. I was given the choice to wait it out, but as Ameli's heart rate showed she was under stress, we opted for the emergency C-section. Long story short, they suspected that I had a placental abruption. Because of the pandemic, Emil was allowed to stay for the delivery but had to leave soon after, only to see us again in a few days when we would get discharged. The hospital stay was unpleasant, to say the least, so I was very relieved when we got to go home. Ameli took to the breast immediately, so I was satisfied and did not foresee any problems. Ameli was an unhappy baby. She was constantly crying and seemed to be uncomfortable in her own skin. Almost the only time she would not cry was when she was being breastfed or when we gave her a bath. We ended up having to give her baths right throughout the night, every few hours for the first few years of her life. Ameli only cried, slept very restlessly, or breastfed. The pediatrician suspected that she had laryngomalacia, which contributed to her restless sleep. He also suspected that she might have a degenerative disease that was affecting her brain. I cut out many food groups from my diet in case I was passing something on through my breast milk that she was intolerant to. I didn't consume any gluten, dairy, eggs, caffeine, or sugar. Ameli seemed to have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. We took her to a pediatric gastroenterologist who had some blood tests done. Ameli kept going from being constipated to gassy to having diarrhea. The cycle repeated itself. Ameli hated tummy time, and we thought that it might be because of her digestive issues, that it might cause her discomfort to lie on her stomach. We started getting some smiles, laughs, and giggles around the 4-month mark. She was struggling with silent reflux, so we spent nights sitting and holding Ameli upright. It seemed to help slightly, but not enough. She spent nights sucking her arm and crying. At 6.5 months, we were admitted to hospital. They did many tests, including scans, x-rays, blood tests, an MRI, an EEG, and a 24-hour pH impedance test to try to find the cause of Ameli's distress. This is when we first met Dr. Lam, a pediatric neurologist we would work with closely for years to come. He too was baffled by her behavior. In the hospital, many specialists came to see us, but we were still no closer to having answers. Every test came back normal. They affirmed that Ameli was struggling with silent reflux and possible renal reflux. We saw more specialists, including a pediatric nephrologist. We started with the recommended medication for reflux, but it only made her gastrointestinal issues worse. We also went to see another pediatric neurologist who concluded that there was, in his professional opinion, nothing wrong with her. He essentially just wanted to drug her with pain and sleep medication. Of course, this was not acceptable to us. At 7 months, we went to see a pediatric gastroenterologist who suggested that Ameli might be one of the 1% of babies who were allergic to their mother's breast milk. In absolute desperation, we started giving her specialized formula. Ameli started crying less, and we assumed that we had found the problem. Unfortunately, about a month later, the crying picked up again. They suggested that we do a sonar and x-rays of her abdomen. However, all they found was a lot of gas. The gastroenterologist suggested antibiotics in case of a bacterial overgrowth, and the neurologist suggested epilepsy medication to calm her brain. To both of these suggestions, our answer was no. Drugging her just in case was not the solution to the problem. We wanted concrete answers and evidence before giving unnecessary medication. Of course, by now, Ameli's development was severely delayed. We thought it might be because she was constantly upset and never had time for practice or play. Only after 8 months and a lot of therapy did Ameli start picking her head up during tummy time. She also started making some noises, and we loved hearing her sweet little voice. Ameli was still sleeping anything between 1 to 8 hours a night. We experienced extreme highs and extreme lows. Sometimes we would only get about 50 minutes of sleep a night. Unfortunately, the crying wasn't only at nighttime. Some days would be filled with crying too. It was just a roller coaster in every way, and some weeks it still is. My mom and my mother-in-law started taking night shifts so that we could get some rest. To this day, they still take shifts. We don't know how we could ever survive without them, and we thank God for the grandparents every day. At 10 months old, she rolled from her stomach onto her back. Every small step in her development was a huge win for us. At this time, Ameli was relatively happy during the day, but extremely unhappy at night. We tried eliminating many food groups from her diet, but nothing seemed to help. At 1 year old, Ameli started sitting up but still needed some support. She has never been a fussy eater, so we felt like at least we were winning in that department. We continued with lots of therapy, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and therapy at home. We transitioned Ameli into her own room and she started having better nights. Unfortunately, this only lasted a few weeks. Ameli was also teething, which made her extra uncomfortable at times. But again, we experienced extreme highs and extreme lows. Cute moments like these always made us feel like we could breathe and carry on again. We worked hard on independent sitting in therapy and at home. Like many kids with special needs, she felt, and sometimes still feels, the need to put many things in her mouth. At 15 months old, we were focusing on independent sitting, head control, and weight bearing on her arms. She began pulling to stand during this time as well. We put lots of effort into crawling. As you can see, something that is meant to come naturally takes so much effort and dedication from Ameli to master. We mostly got the hang of independent sitting. We also started with water therapy, as she is obsessed with water and she needed something to help her manage her anxiety.
What is with snacks?
At 18 months, Ameli started leopard crawling. Unfortunately, she also started pulling her hair out. This is something we're still struggling with today. We continued searching for answers. We had to feed her in the bath because she refused to eat otherwise. At 19 months, we were admitted to hospital again. More tests, MRIs, EEGs and scans were done. We tried some medication, but it only caused her to have drop seizures. We swapped over to a different medication that seemed to help a bit, but we knew this wouldn't be a long-term solution, as this medication is not completely safe to use and it can have serious side effects, especially with long-term use. The neurologist suspected that she might have a rare genetic disorder and suggested we do genetic testing, so we did. Doctor suspected that Ameli had a degenerative disease. I told doctor that I wouldn't accept this. For the next few months, while waiting for the results from the genetic testing, we kept praying and trusting that whatever it was, it wouldn't be degenerative. We had to cut Ameli's hair because she kept pulling it out. We tried horse riding therapy as well. Our days were filled with therapies and our nights were filled with crying. Ameli was still leopard crawling. We worked very hard on trying to get her to crawl on all fours, as we understood the importance of crawling in a child's development. Emil came up with lots of creative ideas to encourage her to push up onto her arms. Ameli's second birthday rolled around and we still did not have a diagnosis. It was very clear at this point that she was not a neurotypical child, but we were still waiting for the results of the genetic tests. We started speech therapy at this time. Ameli started transitioning from leopard crawling to crawling on all fours at 2 years old. She started getting stronger physically. We spent lots of time during the day to help Ameli burn some energy. She loves playing in the airbag at Emil's gym. We had another EEG done to rule out seizure activity. The results were normal. At 2 years and 2 months old, we finally got a diagnosis: Angelman syndrome. When doctor told us, my answer was, I knew it. When Ameli was approximately 1 year old, I saw a video on Facebook of a little girl who had Angelman syndrome. Something about it struck a chord with me. The sleepless nights, the delayed development, the excitability, and the fascination with water. We were both devastated and relieved. Relieved to have answers. Relieved that it wasn't a degenerative disease. And relieved that she would live a relatively full and happy life. With the relief came the devastation of having to accept that Ameli officially had special needs. Never in a million years did we imagine that our child would be disabled and most probably be dependent on us for the rest of her life. Never did we imagine that she might never speak, might never walk independently, be potty trained, or attend school without an aid. I don't think it's something that anyone really considers or imagines until it happens to them. Since then, we've been on and off different medications, all which seem to make things worse. We've also experienced a few nights of vomiting, which may or may not be cyclic vomiting. We're still struggling with hair pulling, anxiety, and sleepless nights. In addition to this, Ameli gets atonic seizures, which means that she experiences a sudden loss of body tone that results in collapsing. This lasts only for a second or two, but unfortunately this can happen at any time. Sometimes it happens when she's crawling or standing, and then she might fall and get hurt. This is why she needs constant supervision. We had to import a safety bed for when we are not at home. This cost us a small fortune, but we could not find anything suitable in South Africa. To try to control or even stop the seizures entirely, we transitioned to a carnivore diet and eventually transitioned to a ketovore diet. This means that Ameli eats mostly meat and eggs with some plain yogurt, blackberries, and avocado. Keeping her in ketosis seems to help. Just before her 3rd birthday, we enrolled her at a school for neurotypical children. Because of Ameli's disability, we send her to school with a caretaker. This is an ongoing expense that we did not plan for, but it is an absolute necessity. At age 3, apart from sleep problems, things started going relatively well. Ameli started walking with support and would even shuffle around by holding onto objects, such as tables and chairs. She loves socializing in her own way and playing with friends at school. Ameli is very sensitive to overheating, so we were left with no choice but to install an aircon in her room. We went on holiday with my parents and had to return after the first night because Ameli couldn't handle the heat. She cried the whole night through. Ameli loves swimming or just playing with water in general. She also enjoys all sensory input such as swinging, messy play, and jumping. She doesn't allow us to ever sleep in or spend much time at home. We have to be out and about to entertain her at all times. She absolutely adores her playgroup classes at Pinkfoot Pret Waterkloof. It's the highlight of her week. On the 3rd of March this year, we experienced the most traumatic day of our lives when Ameli had a seizure that lasted more than 35 minutes. Ameli spent the night at my parents-in-law. As we were entering their property early on Sunday morning to collect Ameli, we received a distressed call from my father-in-law. He told us to hurry because something was wrong with Ameli. I remember entering the room and seeing the shocked look on my mother-in-law's face. Ameli was limp in her arms and she was completely unresponsive. We got straight into the car and rushed her to the emergency room. All this time I kept praying, and I will never forget the fear of actually losing her. I just kept saying, "Please God, please let her be okay. Please stay with me, Ameli." Once we arrived, we got a hold of her neurologist, Dr. Lam, and he guided the medical staff on which medication to administer. All the while, we were praying while Ameli continued to seize. At this stage, her arms and legs were completely stiff and her breathing was labored. Once she was stable, we were transferred via an ambulance to another hospital with a pediatric ICU unit. Ameli didn't have any further seizures and we were discharged a few days later. We are still wrapping our heads and our hearts around our new reality, all the while not fully accepting that this is it. We have high hopes and plans for Ameli's future. We are still trusting and believing that a miracle will happen. We're holding on to Jeremiah 29 verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." This verse is on the front page of the diary that I've written in since the day I found out that I was pregnant with Ameli. This verse has been spoken over her life long before she was born. We are continuing with as much therapy as possible, and we still have a long road ahead of us. Ameli recently started taking a few steps without support. We trust that she will be able to walk independently, even if it is just for short distances. We're walking the road less traveled by. Ameli is currently on no medication and we plan on keeping it that way. We will continue researching and trying to find natural ways to help her. As with most special needs kids, we have many expenses to cover, such as special beds, a device for Ameli to communicate with us, the software required for that device, therapies, a caretaker, nappies, medical bills, and more. My biggest wish would be to be able to afford a night nurse so that we could all get some well-deserved rest. I especially wish we could unburden the grandparents by getting more help. All these expenses easily amount to an approximate spend of 100,000 Rand per year. We do not live in abundance, but we realize how blessed we are. We will not ask for money. However, many people have asked me to create a way for them to donate, especially as this is a lifelong commitment and the expenses won't ever stop. Charlize from Pinkfoot Pret has also asked me to make an option for donation available. Because of this, I have created a Back a Buddy page. Please find the link to this in the description of this video. Alternatively, we will also share Ameli's bank account details if anyone would prefer to transfer money directly into her account. This is completely optional, but it would go a long way in helping us to cover Ameli's ongoing expenses. We appreciate every amount, big or small. If you know of an organization that might be willing to donate, please do not hesitate to share. Ameli is a very lovable and sweet girl. She loves to cuddle and spread joy wherever she goes. Despite all her challenges, she's the most determined little human I have ever met. She deserves only the very best. We wish to spread awareness about Angelman syndrome so that we may create a better future for Ameli. Please help us to spread the word.